DreAllDay.com.
Baldwin, DreAllDay.com. Let's talk about the vision. Talk about your vision for your future and what you actually want to create and how we actually get to making this thing real and making it a real thing in your life and not just something that you're talking about. See, the thing is, many people, not everybody, but many people, if you're watching a video like this, on a channel like this, or you looked up something that led to you watching this video, you probably have a vision. You got some kind of idea, a picture in your mind of what you want your life, your business, your whole situation to be about. That is probably vastly different than what you actually have going on right now. Doesn't mean it's a complete change. It's not a complete 180 from where you're at right now, but it's probably, the vision is probably a lot bigger than what you got going on right now. You will have to enhance yourself, your efforts, your outputs, your everything in order for your real life to equal that vision that you have in your mind. And here's the thing, the first thing, a couple of things I want to tell you. The first thing is, if you have a real vision in your mind of what you want to create in your life, let me tell you something that you can do right now, today, as soon as you get done watching this video. As a matter of fact, you can do it while you watch this video. It's going to separate you from 98% of all the other people who also have a vision. Forget about the people who don't have a vision. We're not even talking about that. They're not even my audience. But everybody who has a vision, who's watching this, or who hears something like this, I'm going to tell you how to separate yourself from 98% of everybody else in that group. Is you need to write your vision down. You need to write it down on paper or digitally, however you like to write. Google Docs, your notes app, whatever, pen and paper, whatever. Write it down so that you can actually look at it and read it and see it, so that if you meet somebody who says you have a vision and you say yeah, and they say let me see it, you can show it to them. Why do you need to write it down? Why does this matter so much? And maybe you've heard myself or others talk about writing down your goals. I talk about writing down goals all the time, by the way. So if you don't have your goals written down for the next month, year, quarter, week, etc., you need to start writing down your goals. Why do we talk about writing it down? Why does that matter so much? I mean, what does it make the goal any better just because you wrote it down? What's the difference? Here's why writing it down matters. First of all, on a practical level, when you write something down, in addition to having it in your mind, you're giving your brain a second impression of the thought. And the more impressions you give your brain of anything, the better the chance that it goes into your subconscious mind. The way the subconscious mind works is through emotionalization and through repetition. In other words, if you tell yourself something one time, it gets to a certain level in your brain. But if you tell yourself the same thing 10 times, it has a better chance of knocking on the door and getting into the house of your subconscious mind. 85% of your thoughts are subconscious thoughts. They're not conscious thoughts. So really, you want the things that you really want your mind to be about, you got to get them into the subconscious. And the way you do that is by either having those thoughts be highly emotionalized or repeating them to yourself over and over and over again. So this is why writing it down helps you create a second impression. So the more you do something, the better the chance the subconscious mind accepts it. That's one reason why you write it down. Another reason why you write things down is that when you have something written down, you can look at it over and over again, so that you don't have to remember what you were thinking 3 days ago or 2 weeks ago or last year, because it's probably going to change a lot in your mind if you were just trying to remember something that you thought instead of writing it down. When you write it down, you know exactly what you said because it's written down. Right? You can't misconstrue something that's written down because it's right there. Now, if you're trying to misconstrue what you thought, then that's different. Or you ever have a conversation with somebody and they're like, you said this, and you're like, no, I didn't say that, I said this, and they said, no, you said this, and y'all arguing about who said what, and nobody can prove it because it's not written down. When it's written down, there's no confusion. Everybody knows what got said, and you know what got said because it's right there on paper written down. That's another reason why you write things down. Third reason why I'm telling you that you need to write down what you want to achieve is because when you have something written down that you want to achieve, the time it takes for you to sit and actually write it down and think about exactly what is in your head and put it on paper, first of all, you got to make it a lot more clear and a lot more concise in order to write it down. Think about when you're talking and you're getting the message across to a person, and then when you have to write that message to a person, it takes a lot more mental work to write it down than it does to just say it. This is why it takes a lot more time to write a book than it takes to make a YouTube video. It takes a lot more time to write an article or write a blog post or an email than it takes to make a Snapchat or a TikTok or a YouTube video. It's much easier to do a podcast than it is to, I mean, think about how many words somebody says in one episode of a podcast. You took an episode of a podcast, like I've done books like this before where I just talked and then just got it all transcribed and then put it out as a book. It took me probably about an hour's worth of speaking. About an hour's worth of speaking to create a book that was, let's say, 100 pages. It depends on how fast you talk, but you get the point. But it was much easier for me to talk for an hour than it is to write a book that's 100 pages long. Now, not all my books are like that. That was just one book that I did it like that, and that worked for me because I know how to put books together. I had that experience. The whole point is, it takes a lot more thought to write something out than it takes to speak something out. Which means the people who take time to write things out have to think a lot harder than the people who just speak about the things that are on their minds. That's why you need to write it down. And when you take the time to think about something such that you can write it down, you go deeper into whatever the topic is that you're thinking about, which means you're going to come up with better ideas, better insights, and a much more clear and crisp vision of what you want to achieve when you write it down. Here's the fourth reason why you want to write things down. When you take the time to write things down, other people will see, damn, this person took the time to write this out and write it down. They must be serious about what they're doing. Let me ask you a question. If somebody comes to you and tells you that they have a business plan, they got an idea for a business that they want to build, and you say, okay, what's the idea for your business? And then they start telling you about the business. It might sound like a great business. It might sound like a trash business. You might be completely confused by what they say. But either way, if they sit there and talk about it, you get it on a certain level because they talked about it and they said what they want to do, right? But if somebody says to you, hey, I got an idea for a business I want to build, and you say, okay, what's the idea for the business? And they say, all right, let me show you. And then they pull out a packet of paper with the business plan all written down on paper, or they pull out their Google Docs or their Notes app or Microsoft Word, their computer, and they show you the business plan written down on paper. Let me ask you a question. Don't you take that one a little bit more seriously if they take the time to write it down? Even if the business plan, even if you don't think the business is going to work, even if you think that ain't that great of a business idea, but the fact that they took the time to write it down tells you that they're a serious individual when it comes to what they're talking about, because they took the time to actually write down what they want to do for their business. Can we agree that you take it a little bit more seriously when somebody writes it down than when they just say it? Okay, so now that I've sold you on the idea of writing things down, let me get to the further point that I want to make here. Whatever vision you have for your life, your business, whatever you want to create, you need to write it down on paper, and you need to be looking at it consistently. You need to be reading it, rereading it, editing it. And this is why I usually tell people to write things down digitally so that you can edit it easily. But if you like to write pen and paper, do that as well. Continually editing, changing, because it's going to change over time. Your vision, you might have a better idea tomorrow than what you got today. Or one part of it, you might say, I don't like how that sounds. Let me say it this way. And you can change it up. Write it down, whatever your vision is that you want to achieve, so that it becomes a real thing when you put it down on paper. And here's the next thing. Whatever that vision is that you want to achieve, and it's somewhere off in the distant future, or when you want to achieve it, you need to think about, how do I make this thing real? How do I start making this thing real right now? Because usually we don't think about this until or unless somebody close to us or somebody we know of, maybe a known person, loses their life before their time. Like they're not dying of natural causes. They just die of something that you wouldn't expect them to die of. Usually we don't think of those things unless something like that happens, but nobody's guaranteed to any of us. Nothing has guaranteed to any of us how much time we have. So this vision that you have of what you want to achieve and how you want to live, you need to have a sense of urgency about making it a real thing and not letting it just be this vague, sometime in the future, maybe one day idea in your mind. This is the way a lot of people live. They have these maybe one day ideas. Like, maybe one day I'll do this. Maybe one day I'll achieve this outcome. Maybe one day I will build this business. Maybe one day I'll have this kind of setup. Maybe one day I'll have this kind of family. Maybe one day I'll have this kind of career. But if you don't make real plans, let's park closer. I'm about to go to the grocery store, so park closer. If you don't have real plans for making it a real thing and turning it from just an idea in your mind into something tangible, then here's the facts, folks. It's probably not going to happen. It's probably never going to take place. And all of us, myself included, have had ideas in our minds that we thought about, even talked about to ourselves, said to ourselves. Maybe we saw somebody else doing it. We were like, damn, that's a good idea. One day I might want to do something similar to that, or that's inspiring to me. Maybe one day, I'll get mine like that, the way that they have theirs. But if we never wrote it down and never made it into a real thing, then how does it become real? Well, let me answer that question for you. It doesn't. It never becomes real unless we make it into a real thing. We actually have to do something to turn the thing that we're doing into something real. It can't just be something that we're thinking about, talking about, dreaming about. The question is, how do you actually start turning this into a real thing? The answer to that question is you got to get a sense of urgency about making your visions real, which means writing it down. Because when you write it down, what's going to happen is you're going to start asking yourself some critical questions. Okay, well, how does this make sense? How is that actually going to happen? How am I actually going to do that? Like, I see what I'm saying, but how am I actually going to do that? How is that going to actually occur? And when you start asking yourself those questions, now you're going to start refining your idea and sharpening it and making it into something that actually makes sense instead of something that just sounds good. And then you start putting the plan in place to actually do it. This is where the rubber meets the road here, is when you start putting a plan in place to actually do stuff instead of just talking about stuff. A lot of people talk about stuff that they're going to do, but they don't actually go out and do the stuff that they're going to do. And life is short and long at the same time. It's long in that you should play the game and live your day-to-day life as if everything that you do now, you're going to reap the benefits or the consequences of 5-10 years from now. But at the same time, you need to make moves and take actions as if you don't have a whole lot of time remaining. So it's like these two ideas, they are seemingly in conflict, but they actually work together. You need to move with urgency, but think and plan long term, both at the same time. Because if you don't start taking serious action to bring your visions to life, the things that you want to achieve, one day what's going to happen is you're going to be out of time. There's not going to be any more time for you to do the thing that you wanted to do, and you're going to be sitting there on your, hopefully not on your deathbed, but wherever, saying to yourself, damn, I had all these visions and all these dreams and all these plans and all these things that I wanted to do, and I never actually got around to doing it. I never got serious about making this happen. I never took any serious tangible action about doing these things, but I just had these great ideas. All right, there are very few people in the world who get paid for ideas, folks, but we do get paid for execution. We do get paid for making things happen. We do get paid for taking a vision and making it into a real thing. And that's what I'm trying to embed in your mind with this video right here. So hopefully I don't want to go too much deeper on this subject, but I want to give y'all enough just to give you something to think about, and not just think about, but act on. That's the most important part here. The purpose of this video is to get you to start acting on these things and not just talking about them. So with all that said, text me to get my daily motivation straight to your phone. My number is 305-384-6894. I send it out every day. Number 2, get your ticket to my next live event. It's called Work on Your Game Live. It's taking place in Miami, Florida, February 3rd and 4th here in Miami. Get your tickets at workonyourgame.live. And number 3, if you want to join my coaching program, I have one coaching program that is an 8-week program that is a system that takes people to their next level financially in your business through systems, strategies, mindset, and execution. Go to workonyourgame.net, watch the training. At the end of the training, a button comes up for you to schedule a time you're going to call with me, and we go from there. Work on your game. Dre all day.